Old lady eats with homeless man daily. She was surprised when she knew who he was. An elderly widow, Elizabeth, in order to keep her mind occupied, visits a restaurant daily. Until one day she meets this stranger and starts having meals with him daily. But when she realizes who he is, it is too late. In memory of her late husband, she still lived on the farm. Elizabeth's daily visits to the restaurant quickly turned into a blessing because she didn't have any kids or grandchildren to keep her company. A few tables away from her sat a lonely man. Elizabeth gave it some thought and invited him to her table, recognizing that they both wanted someone to talk to. Elizabeth and the man's chat started off awkwardly before he suddenly got excited. Knowing who he was beforehand would have made everything so much better. If she knew why he was so joyful, she would understand. Joseph seemed excited as he gave his introduction. He seated himself quickly across from Elizabeth, and they immediately started chatting about whatever they could think of. Elizabeth observed Joseph to be a good and loving young guy during their interactions. He still had his own secrets. When she left the diner that day, she was happy. Elizabeth was eager to go to the diner in the morning. It ended up being a welcome surprise for her. Elizabeth noticed Joseph as soon as she entered the restaurant. As he waved at her, a big smile appeared on his face. At the time, it was impossible to know if the man was being sincere. Many others believed he was just using her. Others, on the other hand, thought he liked her company as much as she did. Elizabeth was aware that Joseph and her daily meetings would soon become routine. Elizabeth, however, was mistaken. She disregarded the man's potential threat to her. She would pay dearly for that. One day, when she arrived at the diner, she couldn't locate Joseph. Elizabeth wondered why he constantly waited for her. In order to find out if Joseph had been at the restaurant that day, she went to one of the waitresses she knew. The rude customer questioned Elizabeth about why she was concerned about the location of a homeless man. Elizabeth glanced at the woman, and the woman could see the agony written across her face in her eyes. She was unaware that Joseph was homeless and hated by these individuals. However, she didn't find that to be the most annoying. Being kept in the dark devastated her. She had a lot of things on her mind just then. There were many more indications in addition to all the ones she had missed, like his job loss and his family rejecting him. At that moment, she started to get worried about his security. If he is indeed homeless, there can be only one explanation for his absence. Her mind was invaded by unfavorable ideas, and she was powerless to stop them. She was about to cry because of such ideas. Elizabeth went back to the restaurant and started asking people again after giving it some thought. She discovered that when he visited, his sister was employed there. That allowed him to obtain the food. The day after his sister left, he vanished. Her phone number was the only thing they had that could have led them in the proper direction. Elizabeth worried that she wouldn't want to lend a hand. Their bond appeared to be barely there. She called the woman right away to inquire as to Joseph's whereabouts. His sister was the only person who still gave a damn about him. Her husband forbade Joseph from coming anywhere near her house. She had no choice but to feed him covertly. She could feed him and make hotel reservations for him any time she needed to because of her employment at the restaurant. When the manager learned what she was doing, she was fired. When Elizabeth learned Joseph's tale, she was devastated. He was just a young man trying to find his way in the world. Elizabeth informed Joseph about her farm. It had become too old to keep up with it and was in a mess. A man his age, nevertheless, might make it appear good once more. Elizabeth made the decision to give him a chance. Elizabeth respected Joseph's work and was prepared to compensate him. When he finished working, she would also provide him with a warm lunch and a cabin to stay in. Joseph was rendered speechless at the time. As he encircled Elizabeth, tears welled up in his eyes. He was overjoyed to have a chance to put his life back on track. Elizabeth, however, thought that he was joyful for additional reasons as well. Joseph began by working on the necessary home repairs. The next thing Joseph had to do was tend to the fields. Age had caught up to Elizabeth during the 5 years she had spent working on this. She used to help Joseph at first, but now she can hardly go out of the house. Elizabeth had the impression that time was of the essence. It was her final opportunity, and she only regretted one thing. Although she was never able to fulfill her wish to have a grandchild, Joseph had one more treat in store for her. Samantha, his girlfriend, was introduced to Elizabeth, and it was announced that they were expecting a child. Elizabeth was overjoyed right then and there. Elizabeth was ready to assume the role when she realized she would truly become a grandma. She was living the life she had always desired, therefore, it was a delight for her to assist someone along the path. Elizabeth had succeeded in completing her goal. Joseph had stopped being a homeless person. He put a lot of effort into being a great farmer. Samantha became pregnant with Joseph's daughter within a short period of time. For the first time in a very long time, Elizabeth felt like she had a family. Elizabeth whispered that she was happy to have helped him. Joseph discovered her gone the following morning. She still had one more ploy up her sleeve. Joseph found a letter. Her last will and testament named him as the sole beneficiary and said that she had left him everything.